Hi everyone. Detective Lefebre speaks. It began with a phone call that sounded routine but carried a weight of desperation. Margaret Taylor, a retired schoolteacher in her late 70s, called the bank after noticing a series of unexplained withdrawals from her savings account. Her voice trembled as she explained to the customer service agent that she had been careful with her money, ensuring every penny went toward her golden years. Now, tens of thousands were gone. The agent assured Margaret they would investigate but initially dismissed the matter as a clerical error. Still, something about the case stood out. Margaret's records showed an unusual series of deductions labeled as account maintenance fees and investment reallocations. These charges weren't standard, nor were they logged in the bank's system of legitimate operations. Curious, the agent flagged the account for review and escalated it to the bank's fraud department. When the case landed on my desk, it seemed small, just another instance of financial mismanagement or a mix-up in coding. But as I combed through Margaret's records, I noticed a troubling pattern. The transactions were precise, occurring at irregular intervals, and always just small enough to evade notice. They appeared deliberate, as if someone were testing the waters to see how far they could push without triggering an alarm. And then there was the name, Michael Harding. Margaret had spoken glowingly of him, her personal banker of over a decade, who had helped her plan her retirement. "I trust him completely," she said. Those words stuck with me. If this was fraud, Margaret's trust wasn't just misplaced, it had been weaponized. Michael Harding was the type of banker every client dreamed of having. Clean-cut, articulate, and always ready with a warm smile, he exuded professionalism. He had risen through the ranks at the bank over 15 years, earning a reputation as a meticulous and customer-focused advisor. Specializing in high-net-worth individuals and retirees, he managed millions in assets and was often referred to as the golden boy of the branch. Yet there were cracks in the golden boy's image. Harding's file showed that while his professional record was spotless, he rarely socialized with colleagues and kept an unusually tight grip on his client portfolio. He was known to insist on handling certain accounts personally, often discouraging clients from seeking a second opinion. "It's a trust thing," he would tell them. A statement that seemed innocuous at the time but now reeked of manipulation. Outside work, Harding's life appeared unremarkable. He lived in a tidy suburban home, drove a modest sedan, and avoided ostentatious displays of wealth. Yet his financial records, when examined more closely, told a different story. There were unexplained spikes in spending, payments to private clubs, luxury travel agencies, and a string of cash transactions that didn't align with his reported salary. Harding had secrets, and they were buried in the very system he was sworn to uphold. Margaret's case prompted a broader investigation into Harding's client accounts, and what we found sent shockwaves through the bank. Over 20 accounts, all managed by Harding, showed similar discrepancies. In each case, the withdrawals were masked as fees or investment adjustments, but they weren't logged in the bank's official systems. The amounts varied. Some clients lost $500, others $50,000. But the pattern was unmistakable. The victims were all elderly or financially inexperienced, people who had placed their trust in Harding to manage their money. Harold Jenkins, an 84-year-old widower, was one of the hardest hit. Over the course of 6 years, Harding siphoned nearly $80,000 from Harold's retirement savings, all under the guise of portfolio optimization. Harold never noticed. He had believed every word Harding told him. The precision of the thefts was both impressive and chilling. Harding would wait months, sometimes years, between withdrawals, ensuring the transactions didn't stand out. He diversified his methods, occasionally moving funds into temporary holding accounts that were, in reality, shell companies he controlled. His ability to navigate the system with surgical accuracy made him almost untouchable, until now. Tracing the stolen funds was like unraveling a tangled web. Harding had created an intricate network of financial conduits designed to obscure the origins of the money. The first layer consisted of shell companies, generic entities with names like Capital Growth Partners and Secure Asset Solutions. These companies were registered in different states, with no real operations or employees. Their only purpose was to act as intermediaries for the stolen funds. The transactions themselves were carefully structured. Harding never moved large sums directly from client accounts to his personal accounts. Instead, He routed the money through the shell companies in small increments, often over weeks or months. From there, the funds were sent to offshore accounts in jurisdictions known for financial secrecy, such as the Cayman Islands and Panama. The complexity of the laundering operation was staggering. Harding used layering techniques, transferring money through multiple accounts to create a fog of transactions that would confuse investigators. For instance, $10,000 stolen from Margaret's account might pass through 3 separate shell companies, each in a different jurisdiction, before landing in an offshore trust. By the time the funds reached their final destination, they appeared legitimate, their illicit origins buried under layers of bureaucracy. Harding's choice of victims revealed the cold calculation behind his scheme. He targeted elderly clients who were less likely to scrutinize their account statements or question his advice. Margaret, for example, had trusted Harding implicitly, believing he had her best interests at heart. He used her faith in him to mask his thefts, knowing she wouldn't suspect foul play. Harding also exploited his clients' emotional vulnerabilities. Harold Jenkins had recently lost his wife when Harding convinced him to consolidate his savings into a high-yield portfolio. The portfolio didn't exist, but Harding's empathy and reassurance made Harold believe he was in good hands. Harding's success wasn't just about manipulating people, it was about manipulating the system. He used his insider knowledge to identify loopholes in the bank's transaction monitoring protocols. For example, he structured withdrawals to remain under thresholds that would trigger automatic fraud alerts. By timing his transactions to coincide with legitimate account activity, he further reduced the chances of detection. He also abused the bank's transaction management software. Using his administrator-level access, Harding created false entries that mimicked legitimate activity. For instance, a withdrawal from a client's account might appear as a fee reversal or an investment allocation, terms that aligned with standard banking practices. The final layer of Harding's operation was his offshore network. He worked with financial advisors who specialized in asset protection, a euphemism for laundering money. These advisors helped him create trusts and holding companies in jurisdictions with strict privacy laws, ensuring the stolen funds were nearly impossible to trace. Despite his efforts to maintain a modest public image, Harding's offshore accounts funded a hidden life of luxury. Investigators uncovered payments for private jets, high-stakes gambling trips, and stays at exclusive resorts. These expenditures provided the first tangible proof that Harding's lifestyle far exceeded his reported income. These parts highlight the methodical nature of Michael Harding's scheme, from his deliberate targeting of vulnerable clients to his mastery of financial obfuscation. His blend of charm, intelligence, and ruthlessness made him a formidable adversary. Would you like me to continue expanding on subsequent parts, or focus on specific aspects of his undoing? Harding's meticulously crafted scheme might have gone undetected indefinitely if not for a single error, one moment of carelessness that unraveled the entire operation. The error was discovered during a routine review of Margaret Taylor's account. A withdrawal of $5,000, labeled as an investment reallocation, contained metadata indicating it had been edited manually outside of normal banking hours. This metadata included a timestamp and a user ID, Michael Harding's. Forensic IT specialists were brought in to analyze the bank's internal systems. They discovered that Harding had bypassed the automated transaction approval process by exploiting his elevated user privileges. He had created a backdoor entry, allowing him to manipulate account records without triggering alerts. While Harding had been meticulous about erasing his digital footprints, he had overlooked a minor detail. The system logged all edits, even those made under administrator access. This discovery was a watershed moment. For the first time, Harding's actions were directly tied to fraudulent transactions. Investigators now had the evidence they needed to dig deeper, unraveling the threads of his scheme one by one. With Harding under suspicion, the next step was to observe him closely without tipping him off. Surveillance teams were deployed to monitor his activities both at work and outside of it. What they uncovered painted a stark contrast between the professional image Harding presented and his secret life of indulgence. At the bank, Harding maintained his usual demeanor, cordial, attentive, and efficient. He continued to manage his clients' portfolios with apparent care, never once slipping in his interactions. However, outside the office, a different story emerged. Harding frequented high-end restaurants, private clubs, and exclusive casinos, often paying in cash. He took regular trips to international financial hubs like the Cayman Islands and Panama, ostensibly for business conferences, though his itinerary suggested otherwise. Psychological profiling revealed that Harding was a classic manipulator. He thrived on control and the thrill of deception, viewing his clients as pawns in a game he believed he could always win. His calm exterior masked a calculating mind that relished the challenge of outsmarting the system. To strengthen the case, investigators decided to go undercover. An experienced operative, posing as a wealthy retiree named Edward Lawrence, approached Harding for financial advice. Edward claimed to have recently sold a family business and wanted to invest his $2 million payout. Harding's charm was on full display during their initial meetings. He presented himself as a seasoned advisor who could navigate the complexities of wealth management. "You've worked hard for this money," Harding told Edward. "Let's make sure it works hard for you." Over the course of several weeks, Harding introduced Edward to a series of investment options, culminating in the proposal of a high-yield asset management account. This account, Harding claimed, would generate returns far above market averages. In reality, it was one of Harding's shell companies, designed to siphon Edward's funds into his offshore network. The undercover operative recorded every interaction, capturing Harding's pitch in detail. Harding's language was careful but telling. He avoided technical terms that might raise suspicions, framing the account as a unique opportunity available only to select clients. His confidence was unshakable. He truly believed he was untouchable. Armed with evidence from the metadata analysis, surveillance, and undercover recordings, investigators prepared to confront Harding. The operation was carefully coordinated to catch him off guard. On a Friday morning, while Harding was reviewing a client's portfolio in his office, a team of auditors and law enforcement officers arrived unannounced. Harding's reaction was a masterclass in feigned innocence. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his tone steady and professional. When confronted with the evidence, including the metadata linking him to unauthorized transactions, Harding attempted to downplay the situation. "There must be a mistake," he said, flipping through the documents. "These look like routine reallocations." However, when investigators produced recordings from the undercover operation, Harding's composure began to crack. The recordings revealed his efforts to funnel funds into his shell companies, directly implicating him in the scheme. Harding leaned back in his chair, his face pale. "This isn't what it looks like," he muttered. The final blow came when investigators presented a spreadsheet mapping the flow of funds from client accounts to Harding's shell companies and then to his offshore trusts. Each transaction was meticulously documented, leaving no room for denial. Harding's silence spoke volumes. After the confrontation, Michael Harding was taken into custody for questioning. Initially, he maintained his innocence, insisting the transactions were legitimate and the shell companies were part of an innovative investment strategy approved by the bank. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said, his tone confident but increasingly strained. As the interrogation continued, Harding was presented with the full weight of the evidence against him. Client testimonies, the forensic trail linking him to the shell companies, and the undercover recordings. His veneer of composure cracked when investigators showed him financial records detailing the flow of funds into offshore accounts in his name. "This is a misunderstanding," he stammered, but his excuses grew weaker with each revelation. After hours of questioning, Harding finally relented. "Fine," he said, leaning forward with a resigned sigh. "I took the money, but it wasn't just for me." What followed was a chilling confession. Harding admitted to systematically stealing from his clients, rationalizing his actions as a way to reallocate their funds for better returns. "These people trusted me blindly," he said, as if their trust justified his betrayal. He revealed that he had started small, taking minor amounts to test the system's vulnerabilities. When he realized how easily he could manipulate accounts without detection, his scheme grew bolder. Harding admitted to targeting elderly clients specifically because they were less likely to scrutinize their statements or question his decisions. "It wasn't stealing," he claimed. "It was strategy." Harding's arrest sent shockwaves through the bank and the broader community. Clients who had trusted him with their life savings were devastated. Many elderly victims, like Margaret Taylor and Harold Jenkins, faced financial uncertainty their carefully planned retirements thrown into chaos. The bank, eager to distance itself from the scandal, issued a public apology and pledged to reimburse affected clients. However, the damage to its reputation was severe, leading to heightened scrutiny from regulators and the implementation of stricter fraud prevention measures. Harding's confession also prompted an internal audit, which revealed additional vulnerabilities in the bank systems. These findings led to sweeping reforms, including improved oversight of high-value accounts, tighter controls on administrator access, and mandatory fraud detection training for employees. The emotional toll on Harding's victims was immeasurable. Many expressed feelings of betrayal, not just by Harding but by the institution that had failed to protect them. For some, the financial losses were recoverable. For others, they represented a permanent setback. Harding's trial drew significant media attention, with reporters dubbing him the trusted thief. The prosecution built a compelling case, presenting a mountain of evidence that included client testimonies, forensic financial records, and recordings from the undercover operation. The centerpiece of their argument was Harding's own confession, which painted him as a calculating and remorseless predator. The defense attempted to frame Harding as a victim of systemic pressures within the banking industry. His lawyers argued that he had been driven to desperation by an unrealistic performance culture that rewarded risk-taking. They also claimed he had intended to repay the stolen funds, though no evidence supported this assertion. The jury was unmoved. After deliberating for less than a day, they found Harding guilty on all counts, including fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and elder abuse. The judge, in delivering the sentence, described Harding's actions as a profound betrayal of trust that exploited the most vulnerable members of our society. Harding was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution. However, recovering the full $4.3 million he had stolen proved difficult due to the complexity of his laundering network. Recovering the stolen funds was an arduous process. Investigators worked with international financial institutions to trace Harding's offshore accounts, but many of the funds had been dispersed across multiple trusts and holding companies. Approximately $2.5 million was eventually recovered, most of it from accounts in the Cayman Islands and Singapore. Forensic accountants identified additional assets tied to Harding, including his suburban home and luxury vehicles, which were seized and liquidated. The proceeds were distributed to his victims, though many received only a fraction of what they had lost. Despite these efforts, the full extent of Harding's wealth remained elusive. Some funds were likely irretrievable, hidden in jurisdictions with strict banking secrecy laws. The recovery process highlighted the challenges of prosecuting financial crimes in an increasingly globalized economy. The human toll of Harding's actions extended beyond financial loss. Margaret Taylor, who had trusted Harding implicitly, described the betrayal as a wound that never fully heals. Harold Jenkins, whose retirement plans were upended, expressed frustration not only at Harding but at himself for believing in someone he thought was a friend. For others, the scandal eroded trust in the entire financial system. Many clients, even those unaffected by Harding's theft, withdrew their accounts from the bank, fearing similar breaches of trust. The ripple effects of Harding's actions left scars on the community that would take years to fade. In the wake of the scandal, the bank took significant steps to restore its reputation. It established a fraud victims fund, providing additional compensation to those affected by Harding's scheme. It also launched a public education campaign to raise awareness about financial fraud, particularly among elderly clients. Internally, the bank implemented a series of reforms to prevent similar incidents. These included enhanced fraud detection systems, stricter vetting processes for employees, and regular audits of high-value accounts. The bank's CEO described these measures as a commitment to ensuring this never happens again. While these efforts were commendable, they couldn't erase the damage caused by Harding's actions. The bank remained under close scrutiny from regulators, and its reputation, though partially restored, was permanently tarnished. Michael Harding's story is a cautionary tale about the devastating consequences of greed and betrayal. As a trusted banker, he held a position of immense responsibility, one he used to exploit the very people who depended on him most. His meticulous planning and ability to manipulate both people and systems made him a formidable adversary, but his arrogance ultimately led to his downfall. For me, This case underscored the importance of vigilance in detecting and preventing financial crime. Harding's scheme succeeded not because it was particularly complex, but because it preyed on trust, something that cannot be easily replaced once it is broken. This case remains a stark reminder that even the most sophisticated criminals leave traces, and that justice, while sometimes delayed, is always within reach. If you like the story and want to watch more stories by Detective Lefebre, please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment below. Remember, the truth is in details.